If you want to destroy any nation without war, make adultery or nudity common in the young generation. This was said by Salahuddin Ayyubi, Saladin, a well-known leader and warrior in the history of Islam, who was born in 1138 in Tikrit, Iraq. If you have noticed, even in the 11th century, there were people who understood the effects of addiction to lust and pornography. Looking at society today, it's clear that many countries are facing economic decline, widespread government corruption, and rising poverty, hitting low-income workers the hardest. What most people don't realize is that lust, when unchecked, contributes to this crisis through three root causes of suffering and poverty. 1. The lack of education for youth and citizens. 2. Having children without fully understanding the effects of lust. 3. The use of technology to normalize lustful content. Now I will elaborate on the three reasons of poverty and suffering caused by lust. The lack of education for youth and citizens. Without proper education, young people are more easily drawn into harmful online habits, passing these down through generations. The reason lust isn't taught as a root cause of suffering in schools is not simply due to children are too young to learn about it, but most teachers weren't taught about lust as a root cause of suffering because teacher training doesn't cover it. Education programs focus on curriculum, classroom skills, and academic subjects, not moral, spiritual, or emotional disciplines like self-control or the consequences of unchecked desire. Studies show pre-service teachers get little to no training in moral education, leaving them unprepared to guide students in character or self-regulation. This gap isn't accidental. Modern education often avoids topics on virtue, restraint, or personal responsibility, seeing them as religious, outdated, or controversial. So teachers enter classrooms without the tools to discuss how lust affects focus, relationships, or long-term well-being, because no one ever taught them either. The result is a cycle. Uninstructed teachers can't instruct others. And the silence continues. This silence is systemic, often stemming from cultural taboos, religious norms, and societal discomfort around sexuality. Concepts like brahmacharya, understood as self-restraint or the wise use of energy, are rarely discussed in families or mainstream education, not because they're unimportant, but because they've been suppressed by a long-standing pattern of secrecy. This secrecy around lust and sexuality creates a cycle. The more it's hidden, the more shame and confusion grow, often deepening addiction rather than preventing it. Some suggest this silence is intentional, maintaining control by keeping people distracted or dependent. But breaking the silence through self-education and open, informed dialogue can empower individuals to reclaim their energy, think independently, and live more purposefully. There were historical figures from the past who provided esoteric knowledge about sexual discipline, but it seems that we still need to search for these truth lessons in the internet, and they are not offered in our educational curriculums on purpose. But let me tell you a bit about some few men who discovered something profound but does not exist in your modern school books. In the quiet halls of Oxford, a scholar named J.D. Unwin studied 86 civilizations, Sumerians, Romans, Anglo-Saxons, and more. He found a law as steady as the tide. When individuals practiced sexual restraint, especially before marriage, their energy soared. Art, science, empire, all flourished. But when lust ran free, the flame died within 3 generations. Always. No exceptions. Across time and thought, another idea took root. A French nobleman, the Marquis de Chaudet, once declared that true freedom meant casting off all moral chains, even those of decency. And the powerful, watching from their mansions and boardrooms, saw not rebellion, but opportunity. They let the floodgates open. Pornography, promiscuity, broken homes, these were not accidents. Thinkers like E. Michael Jones called it libido dominandi, the will to dominate through desire. When families crumble from betrayal and addiction, people grow lonely, lost, dependent on the state, the screen, the system. They stop thinking. They stop resisting. And silence. That's part of it too. Schools don't teach brahmacharya, the sacred art of self-mastery, not because they don't know, but because control thrives in the dark. The more shame surrounds lust, the deeper the addiction takes hold. There was a time, in a world very much like ours, the rulers noticed something brilliant. A man drowning in desire is a man who won't ask questions. So they opened the floodgates. Pornography? Free and endless. Lust? Celebrated on every screen. Relationships? Replaced with swipes, clicks, and hollow dopamine hits. They called it freedom, do your own thing, express yourself, liberation, as if they were handing out gifts. But here's the punchline. They never let their own kids play by those rules. While the masses were busy chasing pleasure, the elite sent their sons and daughters to strict boarding schools where discipline, restraint, and focus were everything. No distractions. No weakness. Because they knew, semen is energy, and energy builds empires. Meanwhile, the rest of us? We were handed a script. Feel everything, deny nothing, consume all. And we did. We broke families. We lost focus. We traded purpose for a 5-second thrill. Because a man ruled by lust doesn't build, he browses. He doesn't lead, he scrolls. He doesn't revolt, he refreshes. Let me tell you a story of a father who was driven by desire. Once, in a quiet village, there lived a father known not for his words, but for his ways. He moved through life with hunger in his eyes, always chasing women, never faithful, never still. His children watched. Not with judgment, but with learning. The boys saw it and thought, this is what men do. They grew up believing love was conquest, not commitment. They chased women the way their father did, hungry, restless, never satisfied. Lust became their compass, and broken relationships their path. The girls saw it too. They learned that men cannot be trusted, that love is unstable, that a home can crumble from one man's weakness. Some grew afraid of love. Others sought it desperately, hoping to fix what their father broke. And no one ever spoke of it. No teacher taught the value of restraint. No elder explained brahmacharya, the power in mastering desire. The topic was buried under shame, as if silence could stop the tide. But the truth is this: when a man cannot rule his own heart, he hands the reins to chaos. His lust doesn't just ruin him, it shapes his children's souls before they even know the word. Because what a father lives, his children inherit. On the other hand, a curious daughter watched her father chase shadows, women on screens, flirtations in public, all for likes, for clicks, for a thrill. She learned early, beauty is currency. So she dressed not for herself, but for eyes that consumed her. Her body, her smile, her voice, polished for social media validation, her simps approvals, for monetization, for the algorithm. And another woman, lonely, broke, or broken, said yes to being a mistress. Not because she wanted to destroy a home, but because no one taught her that her worth wasn't in surrender. No one spoke of brahmacharya, not as repression, but as power. The sacred fluid, wasted not just in men, but in women too, energy poured into lust instead of life. Then came the marriage. Two people, both hungry. One for validation, one for escape. They met in secret, not out of love, but out of blindness. Lust had clouded their morals, like fog on a mirror. They couldn't see the wreckage behind them, the spouse betrayed, the children trembling in the silence, the family fracturing like dry wood. They thought it was just a moment, a kiss, a night. But betrayal is a seed. And once planted, it grows into distrust, into isolation, into a lifetime of asking, was anything real? No one warned them. No school, no parent, no elder. And that silence? It wasn't an accident. It was the design. Because a world addicted to desire is a world that won't rise up, won't build, won't remember what it means to be free. If he and she had been taught, if they all had been taught, not as shame, but as wisdom, that energy is sacred, that self-mastery is strength, maybe he wouldn't have burned his life down for a spark. Because it's not about religion. It's about guidance. And without it, we keep passing the wound, not the cure. This could have been avoided in real life if we were educated deeply about the effects of lust on our society and livelihood. But because there are no broader studies about this in the education system, we are all slowly discovering the right and wrongs as if we are walking in a dark cave full of traps and cliffs. Since the elites are deliberately avoiding teaching everyone to stay away from lustful desires that roots to self-infliction, they're more in control of our lives. Instead of proper education, we are being further exposed, encouraged, molded, misguided, and teased using hypersexualized contents in our handheld screens. Now, think more broadly about its impact on every country if majority of fathers, sons, and daughters in a family unit are heavily influenced by lustful programming embedded everywhere nowadays. Do you think this does not affect our world? Let me tell you another story, but this one isn't just an ordinary story. It was a story of a king. There was a man named David, once a shepherd, then a king. A man after God's own heart, who danced before the Lord, wrote psalms, and led a nation. But one evening, he stayed behind while his army went to war. He walked his rooftop, saw a woman, Bathsheba, bathing. One look, then another. Not curiosity, but craving. He sent for her, took her, and when she became pregnant, he reached further into darkness. He called her husband, Uriah, a loyal soldier, back from battle, gave him wine, hoped he'd go home, sleep with his wife, and no one would know. But Uriah refused. He wouldn't enjoy comfort while his brothers fought. So David sent him to the front lines, ordered the troops to pull back, left him exposed, and Uriah died. Lust is one of the root causes, one of the sources of violence and ill intentions toward others. The lewdness of lust blinds the mind and removes goodness from your heart. That is why many people suffer in this earth realm, because this is one of the major contributors, due to human lust. According to the Cathars and Gnostics, lust is one of the addictive illusions and anomalies created by the creator of the material and physical world, in which it is not the true origin or the real source of everything, so that you continue to return to this world of desires and suffering. I will make other videos about Gnostics and Cathars, but for now, let's focus on the second reason of poverty and suffering due to lust. Having children without fully understanding the effects of lust. The unchecked power of the elite grows stronger as addiction to lust and pornography keeps people distracted and trapped in cycles of desire. Without proper education on the consequences, many continue to reproduce without considering the realities of poverty, unstable economies, or the long-term well-being of their children. Pleasure takes precedence over preparation, and emotional clarity fades under constant indulgence. As a result, families stretch beyond their means, parents overwhelmed, children born into hardship, raised without guidance or care. In some cases, families grow larger despite lacking basic shelter or income, driven by impulse rather than foresight. This pattern fuels generational poverty, not because of moral failure, but because the deeper truths about self-mastery and responsibility are never taught. The system benefits from this chaos. A distracted, overburdened population is easier to control, less likely to question, resist, or rise. And so, the silence continues, not by accident, but by design. It's not that I don't want you to have children. I do. I want them to have every chance at joy, at peace, at love. But tell me, can you give them that if you're not ready? And when they're born into a home unprepared, where parents are drowning in stress, working endless shifts, too tired to talk, too broke to breathe, that child learns early, I am not seen. They grow up hungry, not just for food, but for attention. For someone to notice when they're sad. For someone to say, I'm here. But the parents are stretched too thin. Another mouth to feed. Another bill. Another night of silence. And what of the ones born just because passion fled in a moment? No plan. No talk. No thought of what comes after. Life isn't simple. It's waking up to bills, to sickness, to jobs that don't care. It's holding yourself together when everything breaks. And if you can't even care for yourself, who will care for the child? Because love isn't just feeling. It's doing. It's showing up, day after day, even when you're tired. It's having the strength to say, not yet, so that when the child comes, they're not a burden, but a blessing. Imagine this. You're working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Your child needs new shoes, the rent's due, and the grocery bill keeps climbing. Meanwhile, a billionaire flies to space on a rocket built from tax loopholes, while laws are quietly changed to make sure he pays less than you do. This isn't a game. But to them, it is. A monopoly board where real lives are the pieces, moved around without consent. They raise prices, cut wages, drown countries in debt, all while telling us to work harder, as if grinding ourselves to dust will ever close the gap they're paid to widen. They don't see your exhaustion. They're too busy protecting their wealth, passing it down like a crown, while you pray your kid won't inherit the same struggle. And yet, nature gives freely. Sunlight, water, air. The earth provides. If we helped each other, if we taught each other, if we cared instead of competed, could we not build a world where no child goes cold? But greed poisoned that dream. It turned compassion into currency and made us believe suffering is normal. It isn't. It's policy. It's choice. And it's time we stop calling it life, and start calling it theft. When a man is ruled by lust, by the endless chase of pleasure, the hunger for more, he doesn't just lose himself. He becomes easy to control. Because addiction, in any form, is a leash. And those at the top, they don't mind a population too distracted to question, too tired to rise, too broken to build. Capitalism, as it stands, profits from vice. It sells you sex, screens, and shortcuts, then blames you when you drown. But the real tragedy isn't just personal ruin. It's what follows: theft, lies, betrayal, even violence, all born from a soul unmastered. A man who can't rule his desires will eventually betray his values. And when millions live that way, the nation decays from within. Because no country can rise if its people are slaves to impulse. True strength isn't in wealth or power, it's in self-mastery. In saying no so you can build something lasting. In protecting your energy, your family, your future. Without that discipline, we don't progress. We repeat. We fall. And wonder why the world stays broken. If you've reached this point, you are learning more. Now let's talk about the third and last part of the roots of suffering and poverty. The use of technology to normalize lustful content. They built a world where distraction is the norm, where every click, every scroll, is designed to pull you away from what truly matters. Technology was meant to connect us, to teach us, to free us. Instead, it's become a trap. Pornography floods the screen, easy, endless, everywhere. It's not just entertainment. It's programming. A slow erosion of self-control, starting young. Kids see it before they understand love, before they know the weight of desire. And no one teaches them the cost. Because every time you give in, something inside weakens. That energy, your focus, your fire, your will, is drained. Not just in body, but in spirit. You become slower to rise, quicker to escape, less able to build, to love, to lead. And the powerful, they don't fight it. They fund it. A distracted world doesn't question. It consumes. It obeys. But you are meant for more than impulse. Your mind, your strength, your future, it all depends on what you feed and what you fight. Master your attention. Master your desire. That's not repression. That's rebellion. That's freedom. Research shows that excessive porn use alters the brain, reducing gray matter in areas tied to self-control, weakening the connection between impulse and reason. It desensitizes. Young minds grow numb, chasing stronger stimuli just to feel anything at all. Real intimacy fades. Relationships become hollow. Yet the answer isn't shame. It's awareness. Ancient wisdom called it brahmacharya, not just celibacy, but the wise use of energy. To conserve your vital force, not waste it. To channel desire into purpose, not destruction. That energy can fuel creativity, clarity, strength, if you don't let it leak away. Every drop matters. Not because pleasure is evil, but because power is precious. And in a world that profits from your weakness, choosing discipline isn't just personal growth. It's resistance. It's legacy. It's the first step toward a life, and a future, fully lived. I recommend to discern all the information you've learned and reflect first within yourself in real life before jumping into conclusions. Learn from others' mistakes. Pornography distorts young minds by shaping their views on sex, relationships, and identity before they're ready. With easy access through smartphones and the internet, children are exposed early, often by accident, leading to unrealistic expectations, harmful behaviors like aggression and inequality, and risks of addiction and emotional withdrawal. This weakens trust, damages family bonds, and spreads objectification across generations. The result? A society where intimacy erodes and moral clarity fades. Mastering self-discipline over sexual energy isn't just personal growth, it's essential protection for future families and communities. The cycle may even return to affect us if we choose to reincarnate back to this realm, as the world we shape today becomes the environment we may one day be reborn into. That's why my channel is here to remind you that lust is the root of poverty and suffering for most of us. So if you want to broaden your perspective on the world, just subscribe, hit the bell notification and watch my videos to stay informed. Share my videos to people you care about. If you like my video, leave a comment about your experiences and opinions related to what we've talked about today. These are just few simple ways to support my mission and spread awareness. Thank you.